Hey everybody. So I know everybody's been wanting to see the progress on Interstate Made Me's Peterbilt, and I gotta admit this is difficult for me. We got a ton of work to do before mats, and getting it all done, getting it ready for the painter and everything, that's the priority. And making these videos is something I did promise to do and I intend to do, but trying to record and edit video, all that stuff, it's time consuming, and so I'm sure these videos could be a bit better quality and produce a little better, but you know, I'm going to try to catch everything that I can and still get the job done like I promised to do. So anyway, let me show you the way it looks today. And then I think I'll probably go back and show you some footage of stuff that I did during the teardown, but let's see what sort of shape this truck looks like at the moment. So here's the front of it. You can see we got her stripped down, hood's off, bumpers off, cab stripped. The hood's sitting out in the parking lot right now. We got our box off. Fuel tanks are off. We got a temporary fuel tank up on top. Pretty easy to just unhook those two fuel lines and take that off with the forklift. So now more of the frame is accessible. We intend to put a ratchet strap over top of that and drive it to the body shop when it comes time to paint. You can see we got the deck plate, fifth wheel riser off, half fenders are off, mud flaps are off the rear. Bunk's sitting across the shop over there. The exterior of it is stripped down. Look inside the cab and we've got it stripped down. Interior's out of it. We got the floor out. In order to get the floor out, I had to pull the pedals loose, and then in order to move it around again, had to reinstall them. Stuff like that gets time consuming. As you're taking stuff apart, like taking the seats out, taking the bunk air ride off and everything, you got to start plugging air lines, otherwise you got air leaks. Right now the steer suspension isn't going to work because the valve for it was in this passenger side toolbox and I had to take it off. Yeah, so it just it's extensive. As you're tearing it down, everything you do affects other stuff. People, especially, I mean honestly, the guys that are in my shop and see this truck from time to time, they're asking me, why in the world are you tearing it down and giving it a full paint job? It looks better than my truck did when I bought it. And I'll go along with that. This truck's real nice shape. I mean, we're painting the frame on this, and I mean, I don't know if you can see in the video real well, but most frames are not this clean inside and out. But on the other hand, we're going to mats and these other trucks aren't. And so there's definitely stuff on this truck that, you know, it wasn't perfect. A lot of the wiring to the lighting wasn't done great. When this truck was painted, they painted the bunk and cab together on the frame on the truck. So you can see we got this purple on the frame rail. We had it back here at the rear air ride on the bunk. And when people do that, then you get orange peel, and again, it probably don't show up great in the video. The roof cap of the bunk, it had a lot of orange peel, and even I'd say the top of the bunk, they didn't even cover it very well, and it just wasn't all that great. There was sags in the paint in a couple places, stuff that, you know, most people never notice at a glance, but you know, they were there if you got to looking hard. The fenders on the hood were cracked out. We're going to be replacing those. You get looking at the frame rail, and there's brackets on it that were left on that there's no need. So we're we're cleaning up, getting rid of some brackets. There's holes in the frame that either needed bolts or needed filled, you know. We're going to take care of those. There's places where the paint was just plain damaged from, you know, previous events. Everybody knows how that goes. You got a half fender bracket that breaks and it tears up the paint on the frame, stuff like that. There's a lot of just stuff that annoys me. Hardware that was used that ain't right. I mean, these big, large washers like that, that's a USS washer. I think they're ugly and inappropriate if you're working on an automotive application. Most of the time, there are places where you got to use that, but typically what you see are these smaller diameter SAE washers, and that's what they come with from the factory. And so it annoys me. I have a feeling I'm probably, even though those bolts are tight and those washers are doing the job, and there's going to be a deck plate on top of it, I'm probably going to be removing those just because it annoys me that badly. And Jermail, he gets it. He's got the same eye for everything on this truck. He wants, even the details nobody knows about but him and me, he wants them to be right. While we're in here and exposing everything, we're going to be cleaning up some of this wiring. This truck has a digital dash in it, but it still has the original harness for all the sensors and stuff, and the digital sensors, they got new wiring that goes from the gauge all the way to the sensor. So we're going to clean some of that up. Some of the stuff, the way it's zip tied, just ain't real great. Stuff's loose in the frame, so we're going to clean all that up. Another reason why we're going to be painting the frame is because we got new parts on it. We got new brake chambers, we got new shocks, torque rods have been replaced and they're ugly. We're going to go ahead and do radius rods and C-springs on it before the paint job. I'm still waiting on the C-springs to come in, and that's kind of holding me up. You know, that's the way building these trucks are, is you order parts and you're at the mercy of availability and such. Before it goes out to the paint shop, I got to get the half fenders mounted on this and mocked up, make sure they're in position and everything, because we're going to want these brackets to be painted to match to the frame. So that's what I'm going to work on today, I think, is replace the radius rods and get those half fender brackets in place, get the half fenders drilled for the brackets, and then tear it back down, get the half fenders out of the way, and I'll single out the wheels so that we're just running the outside wheels on this, and the frame's more exposed for the paint shop when they get started to work on it. So more work to be done before it can go to the paint shop. We're going to repaint the steering wheel to match. We're repainting the dash and changing it up a little bit. So I got to pull all those panels, keep track of all the gauge positions, keep track of all the switch positions, and keep stuff from shorting out so that we can drive it to the paint shop and back. And while the truck's being painted, we can also have those panels repainted, so it's all being done around the same time, and I'll have time to put it all together before the truck show. Also, I got a floor panel ordered for this. We're going to put a new floor in the cab, painted floor with epoxy, and so that's going to have to be fit to the truck at some point. It all depends on when that panel comes in for me, whether I can do that before or after the truck goes to the paint shop. I'm a little worried about that, but I'll just take it as it comes. So you can see here, I got the half fenders all mocked up, left the plastic coating on it to protect them while I was doing all the work. The original ones, they were in nice shape and everything, but we wanted it to look a little nicer, a little cleaner, so we went from the triangular post mount to a blind mount bracket there. which just it's a lot more durable, plus it's cleaner look, so we really like that. Next thing we're addressing here is this deck plate at the back. Jermail doesn't even know about this, but the way it was originally set up is the back of the deck plate was tucked underneath that rear cross member there, and it meant that the deck plate didn't line up with the frame there at the very back, and to me it just stuck out really bad. So you can see the part that was under the cross member. I cut that off and did my best freehanding it to make it as straight as possible. It turned out pretty good, but now it can set up at the same height as the frame rail. You can see it here in this video, and so it's a much more slick look. The original mounts actually had holes through the top rail, and so I made brackets that were totally hidden and mounted off of an existing bolt. So that'll be a whole lot cleaner for them. Along with plugging those holes, there's a bunch of other holes in the frame that were not being used, so went ahead and cleaned up around them and cleaned out the holes so I could weld them shut. And now you can see here I ground them down, shot some primer on them to keep from some rust coming up in the meantime of it being painted. And so also along the way we did the suspension work I was talking about. The C-springs never came in, so I just rebushed the original C-springs along with putting radius rods in it. And here's our fifth wheel riser, stationary fifth wheel. And originally this was set up for being able to pin the fifth wheel, but Jermail pulls a reefer and so didn't need that. So while the actual place where you pin the fifth wheel is, I'm leaving that for the fifth wheel to rest on. The little hoops or loops or whatever that you can store your pin in, I'm cutting those off. Now the first side, of course, it fell off immediately after I cut at the welds just a little bit. And this one I'm beating the heck out of, and you can see how that turned out. That one didn't want to come off, and that was the one that I spent time recording. So anyway, got those cut off and ground down smooth, and that's just going to clean up the area around the fifth wheel a little bit better than it was before. You know, removing needless stuff. Jermail didn't need that, and so it's gone now. So here you can see I'm halfway through removing the dash, and so it's a little bit of a tedious process. I'm labeling wires as I go, and with these aftermarket gauges you gotta make your own links for power and ground to each gauge, and then you got a telephone wire basically that goes to each sensor. So it's just a matter of keeping track of all that. And here's our bunk and bunk visor. I lost some footage here somehow, but you can see I've already started mounting the visor up. It was kind of drilled for rivets, but I don't like that. I like having it easily removed without going into the inside of the cab. So I drilled the holes a little bigger, and I put nut inserts in the cab. I think I drilled out rivets that were already existed for the bottom holes. The top there, you can see there's nothing in that location. So I got the bottom holes all in position and snug, and then I marked the top hole with my little 90-degree pick. And so then pull the visor back down again, and I know exactly where that other nut zert needs to go. So you can see there, I did mount up our antenna bracket, and so it's interfering with the visor. This particular visor is too flat to the cab to give space for our cable to actually hook to that bulkhead there. So I decided that the best deal for that situation is as I get the visor in place, and then I'm going to clearance the visor a little bit to make room for that cable to hook up. And on a side note, if you're looking at this thinking, well, that visor's don't get painted, and that whole antenna deal looks gaudy and out of place, it does. We're going to paint that antenna bracket to match the bunk. It's stainless because Peterbilt actually produced that from factory, but they used a steel bracket and they rusted up horrible, and that is uglier than gaudy stainless. Alright everybody, so it's New Year's Eve, and I think we finally got this truck ready to go to the paint shop. Come Thursday or Friday, we're gonna stick the bunk on the trailer and haul it off, and then I'll hop in the truck and drive it to the paint shop. So let's take one last look at it before it heads out for the paint job. Got the bunk here. It's got the straps on it. You know, it's ready to pick up and load up quickly. There's one of the new fenders that we're putting on. The other fenders sitting around somewhere. We're not going to put those on. We're just going to take them to the paint shop because they prefer painting the fenders off of the hood. For one, this one's going to be a two-tone, and the fenders are going to be black cherry, so just it's easier not have to tape things off. But also, they just do a way better paint job if they're separated, and a lot easier for them. So we'll drive it off, or drive it. So we'll drive it over there without fenders on it. As you can see, I got the wiring tied up everywhere. Everything's stripped down except for the glass. It's going to be more comfortable with driving it over there with the glass in it. Yeah, I think they're looking at temperatures in the teens or low 20s, unfortunately. So it's going to be a very miserable ride for me. But I got a temporary driver's seat in there, and I got a temporary steering wheel. We got the fuel tank set up on the back where it can be easily removed. Got a couple pipe plugs to put in the fuel lines, and so the paint shop can remove that and have access to all this frame to do a nice paint job on it. We got some areas in the frame where they're gonna have to touch up, smooth out a little bit, where I did some welding of holes. We got our temporary tail lights on it. This thing's ready to go. Next time we see it, it should look a lot prettier than it does now. In the meantime, I've still got a bunch of parts that I need to prep for paint while the paint shop's doing the body and the frame. There's a bunch of other stuff that will be painted at another shop, just so that things can be done faster and make it a little easier on the main paint shop to get everything done. But all that stuff I still gotta get ready for them. We did put the mirrors back on the doors to make it a little easier and safer driving it over, but just 4 bolts on either side, and they'll have the mirrors back out of the way. Oh yeah, one last note. We also took these rivets with us to the paint shop. I've got them marked out. I want some painted purple and some black cherry. And the reason for that is I need some painted rivets to finish installing door handles, and I need a rivet for each fender, and then I always like having a few extra. So I always send rivets to be painted. And here we go. So it was cold that day. It'd been warm 2 or 3 days earlier, like 20 degrees warmer probably, but it wasn't done, and we hit New Year's, and so now's the time. And I think about 27 degrees or so. It could have been a lot worse. I wasn't getting crosswinds until the very end of the drive. But early on, Mark flagged me down and stopped me. And here are temporary tail lights, brake lights. They're magnetic, and one of them fell off, and I don't even know if they were working, honestly. So he stopped me. We pulled them off, and we resumed. Anyway, yeah, it wasn't too bad of a drive. It was probably 15 to 20 minutes to get it to the shop because we were taking back roads. It didn't feel like going through town to get there. And yeah, you know, it wasn't until the very end of the drive. I was getting some crosswind, and it's, you know, it is a little cold for a couple roads. But in general, I mean, I could have went a lot longer, honestly. I wasn't being frozen, so I felt very fortunate. And yeah, this was one of the more, I don't know what you say, uncomfortable moments of the drive, I guess is what you'd say. Because here we are sitting at a decent stoplight. We just crossed over the interstate, and we're sitting there and sitting, and there's utility workers working on electric and watching us, looking at this truck or half a truck, wondering probably where the other half was. And we just sit there. But in the end, you know, nobody ended up stopping us or anything along the way. And yeah, well, and this is where I probably ought to share, you know, I'm the one driving. It's been a long time since I've drove a truck that distance, but there's a reason for that. I don't have a CDL, and Mark, he's got a Class B, and you know, when I assumed he was going to drive it because he usually drives the trucks, test drives them, stuff like that. He's like, no, I'm not going to lose my CDL. You have nothing to lose. You don't have a CDL to lose. So I ended up driving. But no, it wasn't a bad drive. I did find with the exhaust off, I came close to smoking myself out of the cab a few times, but all in all, like when I started wrenching, we were working on big cams and a lot of mechanical engines and stuff like that, and so all that raw fuel and breathing in and stuff, it just brought back memories. And yeah, it's a healthy engine, and with the tires singled out and stuff, I spinning tires a bit here and there, not on purpose, but the engine just kind of did that, and I kind of like the throttle. But we got it over there with no hassle, no issue, and then we loaded up the bunk, and Mark took that over afterwards, and it's all there at the paint shop. I heard within a couple days that the bunk had already been painted, so I think they got right on it and can't wait to get it back. So everybody, this is the next project. This is an old Pete. It's cool. Extended hood, 379, 36-inch bunk, 300-inch wheelbase. But it's a mile high in the air. I mean, it don't have blocks under the springs or nothing, but for everything you'd expect a Pete like this to be, the front end's still sitting pretty high. And so we're going to put a Jimmy Farrell air ride on the front of it on 379. I don't know how many people realize that he's began offering a kit like that, but he has. So make sure you subscribe so you can see what all it takes to put a J Farrell kit on a 379. I mean, he's got the best quality stuff. He really does. I don't think you can fault him on anything. I'm gonna show you all this awesome stuff that differentiates his kit from anybody else's, and I had to do a couple things to make the kit fit. But man, this truck's a 93, so check it out and see what's going on. Anyway, thanks for watching.